Hello, and welcome to Greywood Gardening. It is early June, so it is the perfect time to do a garden tour. Now we're going to check out the Veggie Garden, the Wildflower Meadow, and some of the others, but we'll start right here in the Cottage Garden, where the bearded iris are an absolute peak bloom, and they just look wonderful, weaving their way through the center of the cottage garden with their bright, huge, colorful blossoms that you can smell if you get even close to the garden. Now, in addition to the iris, we do have a bunch of the dianthus blooming now, and the chives are all blooming and looking very cheerful as the big allium are just fading away. We do have some bachelor buttons blooming, although when they came up, they got eaten to the ground by the deer. They have regrown, but their blossoms are a little sad this year. Also, the lavender is getting positively huge this year. I think we're either going to have to dig up some of it and move it to reduce the size, or we're going to have to accept that we're going to lose some of the plants around it that it's already starting to overtake. Overall, this is one of my favorite times of the year for the cottage garden because I just love the bearded iris so much, and it just looks beautiful, although we have a whole lot of exciting flowers to come. All right, let's go stop in the Mound Garden on the way to the Veggie Garden. So this Mound Garden right outside the Veggie Garden is not looking its best right now. All of the creeping phlox is just finishing blooming, and the catmint is just beginning to bloom. But one thing that I'm very excited about is we cleared this big new section last fall and planted it with seedlings that we started over the summer and got in the ground in September. And it looks like everything is doing really well. We have Rudbeckia in front, yarrow in the middle, and then wild bergamot in the back. And it looks like everything is growing strong, and so at the height of summer, everything on this mound should look pretty phenomenal. All right, Veggie Garden. The Veggie Garden got off to a little bit of a rough start this year. Part of that is because of the really cold spring we had, and we were a little late getting stuff out. And part of it's because for the first time ever, we had a pretty bad fungus gnat infestation down in the seed starting layer. And so a lot of the seedlings were really stunted as their roots were getting eaten by those larvae. And so everything came out much smaller than it normally would have been. Now this has not really affected anything here in the salad bed. These lettuces were all really stunted when they got planted out, but they have done a great job of catching up. Everything is doing great here. Where we really feel the pain, unfortunately, is in the peppers. The pepper plants are super small. They're half the size that they would normally be at this time of year. It does look like they're beginning to recover, but it's still pretty sad. It's probably going to be a significantly later start to harvesting peppers. However, we do have the peppers that I overwintered in the seed starting layers, and those are doing pretty good, and they're already starting to produce peppers. We'll see how big those get. Hopefully those plants are now getting their roots nice and deep. Our tomatoes are doing fine. They're actually right on track. They appear not to be bothered too much by the fungus gnats. We did have one tomato plant got accidentally stepped on by little Greywood, and it got replaced by a new one, so that one's a little small. The peas this year are actually way behind. I planted the seeds, I believe, sometime in the end of April, and it was like at least 2 full weeks before they actually sprouted. And I think that's just the really cold temperatures preventing them from germinating. The zucchini was direct seeded just a week or two ago on Memorial Day weekend. It's coming up nice and strong. I'm also testing planting some nasturtiums in with the zucchini because there's been some research that shows that nasturtiums with the zucchini will actually reduce the impact of squash bugs and squash vine borers. It's actually one of the relatively few companion planting pairs that's actually supported by research. So I'm excited to see how that works out. I have a fun experiment going on with the garlic this year. Normally, I plant my garlic 1 per square foot, and it does really well for me. But I did notice a lot of the instructions say that they only need to be planted 6 inches apart, which is a massive increase in volume. So last fall, I planted 1 bed at 1 per square foot, and 1 bed with everything about 6 inches apart. And so we'll see at the end of July whether these garlic produce heads that are just as big as these. And if they do, that means I can grow a lot more garlic in a lot less space. Also, I haven't pulled my mulch out of the garlic beds yet. This is definitely a task that is overdue to be done. The onion sets that I transplanted are actually doing really well. I'm pretty impressed. Almost nothing has fallen over, and they seem to have taken. The direct seeded onions are just barely coming up here and there. The leeks look like they're doing well, and the direct seeded scallions are coming up well. So everything, particularly the direct seeded stuff, way behind where it should be because I got it in the ground so late. But overall, I think the allium bed here is doing well. The asparagus bed is doing great. I planted these asparagus crowns in mid-May. Every single one of them is coming up now. I pulled the dirt all the way around them, so it's up all the way. I've got now 20 of these green Millennium asparagus and 20 of the purple asparagus. And if things continue to go well, I should even get to harvest some of them next year. The potatoes in pots are going gangbusters. They're doing phenomenal. I've already filled the dirt up almost all the way, and the plants are definitely big enough now for me to get the dirt filled up to the rim. And in fact, I found a few more large pots. So like 2-3 weeks after I planted these, I planted some more seed potatoes in these little pots, so they'll be coming in a few weeks behind. We'll see what the harvest is like at the end of summer, but so far, this feels like a phenomenal way of growing potatoes. Feels like they don't even take up any space at all. Also, I'm noticing my oregano is about ready to be harvested to be dried for the next year's worth of dried oregano. I want to do that before it blooms. All right, well that is about the state of the veggie garden right now. Not quite as exciting as most of the other stuff. So let's go take a look now at the Wildflower Meadow, which is really starting to bloom. The Wildflower Meadow is starting to look magnificent. From a distance right now, it's just a sea of white as these daisies are blooming everywhere. But when you walk out here, you start to see this light blue of the flax weaving in between it, and you can see the Sweet William is just starting to bloom, giving all of these pinks and reds and magenta colors. Now these daisies are going to keep going for another 3 weeks or so, and they'll start to fade and the yarrow will start to bloom, and then eventually the rudbeckia and echinacea are going to start blooming, and then the sea of white is going to turn into a sea of yellow. But already there are just thousands and thousands and thousands of flowers blooming in this relatively small area. It's constantly filled with butterflies and bees and dragonflies. At night it's lit up with the fireflies, and of course the deer are constantly coming through and grazing, which means you have to watch your step. I love the Wildflower Meadow that we made. There are a good amount of noxious weeds in here. We got Canada thistle, so I'm working on pulling those when I can. But overall, it's been a great experience building this. All right, one more thing to look at, and that is the butterfly garden. All right, so this is the future site of the butterfly garden. This is a bed that's about 10 feet by 107 feet. I've got it tilled, I've had it tarped for about a month now. However, it has not been that warm, so the solarizing I don't think has worked that well. I can see tons of grass growing under here. So the next big project I have is to lift the tarp, dig out whatever grass needs digging out, and start laying out the butterfly garden. All right, that's all I have for you this time. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below, or you can email me at brian@greywoodgardening.com. And until next time, happy gardening.